Welcome to this new edition of Blue Paint Horse Studio. I'm Tomara Maitra. I'm the artist that you're watching. Blue Paint Horse Studio is the name that I came up with a long time ago for wherever I was painting. I wanted to call it the studio, so that's what I did, even though it's generally just a room in the house or part of a dining room or something of that nature. So, but I have a lot of paintings, and so they need to belong somewhere. So their home is Blue Paint Horse Studio. And this is a painting that's been a long time coming. I've been wanting to paint a monochromatic blue paint horse to match it. Paint and Pinto are very similar. They're not the same exact thing. You can look up the difference. They're very, very similar, but not exact. But this is probably a little bit more Pinto than Paint, quite frankly. But I don't know if anybody's really going to care. So I have loved horses ever since I was a young girl and really enjoyed them all through my life, even though I wasn't around them, even if I wasn't able to ride them, which I was when I was younger, but I don't ride them anymore. Not that I don't want to, I just don't have one. But one day I will have a horse, and it will be a dream come true for me. So in the meantime, I have this giant 4-foot tall painting to keep me company. I have lovingly nicknamed her Big Blue, even though I have no idea if it's a he or she in the picture. The photograph came from Pixabay. They are a wonderful resource for artists. They have royalty-free photographs there, and that means that you can make prints and paintings all day long of the photographs. Photograph references there, and it's just a wonderful resource. They have all kinds of stuff there. I am building the three-dimensionality of the muscles. I'm really studying the you can see my head twitching back and forth right there. I'm really looking at a reference photo to the right on a monitor on a laptop. Every time I paint, I am studying a reference photo like crazy. There is a lot of there's a school of thought out there that says, if you're a good artist, you can paint from your head, out of your mind, out of your head. And I just have never met anyone that was able to do that. I've met a lot of very good artists, and every single one of them needed something to look at, either by life, still life, a photograph of a person that was sitting in front of them, or photographs themselves. I'm sure there's somebody out there that might have a photographic memory like that, but they are very few and far between. Most people cannot hold detail in their head like that. So to me, that's just it's like an old wives' tale. If you're a good enough artist, you can draw from memory. Granted, back in the day when I used to draw horses a lot in graphite, I could draw them pretty decently out of my head because I was so familiar with the shapes of them. However, the details were always missing. The details weren't as rich as they could have been if you're looking at something from real life. Here we're going over to the other side. I know the video editing, I'm still new at this, so I know the video editing is a little choppy. I apologize. Appreciate you watching anyway. You can see on the right hand side, right up next to where I'm painting currently, I've already done the underpainting for this horse. And during the underpainting, I pretty much nailed the intensity of that softness in the back. That's the side of her belly with the color changes in her fur. And I wanted to keep it pale to create that distance, that depth of field, so that the darker parts of her look like she's really coming forward at you, and they're more clear. They're not as out of focus and fuzzy. I've fuzzed out a lot of my lines as much as possible to make it recede, to get that foreshortened look. So I was pretty happy with the underpainting. I nailed some parts of it. I didn't actually have to go in and repaint them. That's always a bonus. Here I'm always making sure that my brush strokes are going in the direction of the fur. Even on smooth fur, when you think it might not matter, if you look to the left of the jaw, you can still see how I have painted it. I'm using Liquitex Basics. They are a pretty thin and translucent paint, and so it takes you layers to build up some of the more translucent colors. Ultramarine blue is definitely one of those, and takes you some layers to build up that opacity. And while you're building it up, you should always keep your brush strokes going in the same direction as the fur. Makes it much more realistic. There's a couple places I actually messed up. It was kind of funny. And when I came back over it, I was like, oh no, that's not going in that direction at all. You can change it, but it's always much easier on you, and it starts that flow of the eye if you go ahead and paint it in the correct direction. So here I'm blocking in the different colors of the mane. She was a beautiful pinto. She was actually chocolate brown and white, and I don't know if it was slightly overexposed, but the white was a pure white. It was a really beautiful white, and the mane had those stripes of color, which I always liked in pintos, where they have the stripe of the color and then a stripe of white and stripe of the color. It has that almost a zebra-like quality to it. Here I come back in with my liner brush. I feel like I've gotten as deep as I can with that was probably a filbert. I use a very thin filbert, small filbert for much of this. This is my liner brush. I like to use the liner brush. Not everybody does when they're doing something so big. A lot of people like to use the liner brush only for, the end details. As you can see, I'm starting to get some of those stray hairs in there, and I really need that liner brush to go ahead and start building that hair-like texture. And I'm loading it up pretty good. So it's pretty full of paint. It's not, if you use paint as a kind of an ink-like consistency, then you can get really super thin lines. This is not that thin yet. I do that later when I come through and detail the hair a bit more, but this is pretty thick paint still. So. Some people might ask where blue Paint Horse comes from. That is it's a long story. It's a long story. I took a survival camping class with my mother a long time ago, and it was just she and I, just the girls, and we had such a blast. And it was conducted by a Native American Indian fella, and we actually did a sweat lodge, and he taught us how to make fire and all this other wonderful stuff. Anyway, by the end of the weekend, he would give you your Indian name, and you wrote down like things you liked, favorite color, stuff like that. So he could kind of pull your name together from what you were attracted to. And I loved horses. I loved the color blue, so he gave me my Indian name, Blue Paint Horse. Actually, it was Blue Ember Pony. I should say that right. Blue Ember Pony. And so that's where I got Blue Paint Horse from, because I grew up. That was when I was young. I'm not a pony anymore. But it was very special to me. It meant a lot to me, and it stuck with me. So I turned it into my studio name. You can see how many layers it takes to get that in there. It takes a lot of layers. Yep, takes lots of layers. That is one of the things that I learned about acrylic painting and painting in general. It took me a long time to figure out that I was not layering my paint enough. I was expecting to be able to, throw a couple colors down, throw them in where they needed to be, and then it would magically be solid, be a painting, be good, be three-dimensional. Come to find out, the three-dimensional comes from the layering. So I have only ever barely worked in oils. I've mostly worked in acrylics. The dry time in oils made me a little bit crazy, so I just gravitated towards acrylics and stayed with them. So I'm not sure. I know it's not faster, obviously, because you have to dry in between layers with oils. However, I know there's things you can add that'll make that better, so I can't speak for oil painting. But in acrylics, the only way that I can get the depth that I want is by building up the layers. You can see I'm coming through here and layering in the white on top of all the darks. I tried to pretty much finish out the darks first. It's easier to lay white on top, and white stands out more on top of a dark color. So I usually build from dark to light. A couple of us artists were talking about that the other night, and I realized that I do that, and not everybody does it that way. You know how it is when you find out, oh, you mean everybody doesn't do the same thing that I do? How strange. So yeah, I like it when the lights sit on top of the darks. Usually my underpaintings are almost always the medium to the darkest hue of fur, and then build up into the medium range, and then with the highlights last. So you can see this is a little, I feel like some of this is slightly out of focus. I've actually recently bought a new camera. I just don't know how to use it yet, and I'm hoping that the new camera is better. This is actually done on a Canon DSLR. Bless its heart, I bought it when it was a little bit older, and I like it a lot, but it's not really built for video. It takes video, but I think it was more geared towards, short clips and stuff like that, not like long painting videos like I'm putting it through right now. So hopefully the new camera will help out with that. Here I am filling in the ears. I'm finally getting into the meat of the horse. You can see a little more detailed what the mane looks like. This one ear was completely dark except for some detailing. Sometimes I take a look at a photograph, and for my painting I try to see if I can lighten it, to see if I can pull any more mid-tones out, see what the details might be. This was a really nice point of darkness in this painting, and it really sits on top of all that hair really well, so I kind of left it alone. You can see I'll pull in some detail a little bit later here in the fur, but there wasn't really that much in the photograph. I've left the back side, that little left side, I've left that a little rough. I didn't realize how rough I left that until I was almost completely finished, and I saw that. I was like, oh, I never went back and made that smoother. So I left it really rough there. I'm laughing seeing it because I remember when I came across it going, oh, I didn't finish that part. And I thought I had. So you can see here I'm adding some of those little tufts of hair. She had fuzzy ears. I believe that this was quite the gap. I believe that this horse was probably outside a bit in the pasture. They usually get nice warm fuzzy coats on them when they're left to the elements, and not in the stables so much. I'm trying to hinting at some of those veins. Animals have, well, we all do, but some of the animals, you can see the veins under their coat. It's always difficult to figure out how subtle to make them. You want them to stand out enough so that people know what they are, but you don't want them to look like worms sitting on top of their ears. So I always go back and forth a little bit with the darks and the lights. I want to make them subtle, but I want to make it not just a variation in fur color. I want it to be a real thing. So, and that shadow on the bottom right hand of that ear makes more sense. There's a bit of hair from the forelock that goes across it there, and that falls into place later. So this is about it for this portion. I'm just going to go in and get ready to really lay in my forelock hair. I hope you enjoyed this voiceover. I'm going to pick up the other videos, the ending videos, all the detail, go in those coming up next. So thank you so much for joining me. If you like this video or learned something, or at least were entertained for 16 minutes, please like and subscribe. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Thank you.